So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a very short span of time. Now, the idea is that just watching this lecture would be job half done, because I say this every time. Just after watching this lecture, you need to revise it as well. Why? Well, revision helps in consolidating these current affairs in your memory. Otherwise, you'll quickly forget them. Now, you can revise these current affairs from the notes provided by us, and these notes shall be shared on our Telegram channel. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. Alright then, let's quickly begin with today's lecture, but first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. Okay, so let's start the lecture. So daily current affairs, 24th of July, Thursday, and here is the topics list. Okay, so in total, we'll be focusing on these 4 topics. Number 1 on this list is India's NDCs under Paris Agreement. Now, what are NDCs under Paris Agreement? Paris Climate Agreement. These are nationally determined contributions. So, India gave a huge list of targets that it would achieve for fighting against climate change. India has achieved one of its targets, okay, well in advance. So, we'll talk about this NDCs Paris Agreement. Clear? Then, second topic is India's search for critical minerals. We have talked about critical minerals in our previous current affairs lectures as well. We'll once again talk about critical minerals, okay, because critical minerals are actually critical for India's development, okay. So we'll talk about this. Then third, we'll talk about ethanol blended petrol program, EBP program. Well, India achieved the target under EBP program. So whatever India set out for, or whatever India wanted to achieve basically, well, that has been achieved well in advance. We thought of achieving this target by 2030, but we have achieved this target by 2025. So it's a good news. Okay, it's actually a reason to celebrate. Clear? So we'll talk about EBP program, and in the end, we'll talk about Paika Rebellion, which happened against East India Company in Odisha. There is some political controversy going on with respect to Paika Rebellion, so we'll talk about this. Okay, so these are the 4 topics that we shall zero in our attention on. Let's start discussing them one by one, starting with India's NDCs under Paris Agreement. Okay, now listen to me carefully. The thing is that Paris Climate Agreement, Paris Climate Agreement of 2015 was a landmark agreement. And it was landmark because for the first time, there was a broad consensus amongst countries, members of UNFCCC. Okay. All the countries of the world came together and agreed on an agenda to fight against climate change. And the reason for its success was, well, the thing is that under Paris Climate Agreement, well, countries were not given targets to achieve. What happened was, under Paris Climate Agreement, every country was asked, what can they do to fight against climate change? What can they contribute? Okay, so every country gave their own list of contributions that they can make towards climate change or fight against climate change. Okay, so every country gave their list of contributions, clear, based on their circumstances, their economic situation, everything. Now, those contributions, those targets that every country gave were called nationally determined contributions. Okay, after accepting all those nationally determined contributions under Paris Climate Agreement, it was agreed, okay, now you have given your contributions. Now you have told us what you can do. We didn't force you to do anything. Now you have said that you can do these things, right? We accept that. Now please do these things. Okay. So under this, UNFCCC did not give targets to different countries to fight against climate change. Countries themselves gave themselves targets. UNFCCC says, Paris Climate Agreement says, that whatever you have said, just follow that. You have decided these contributions. Now just follow them. Okay. So every country was happy with this because no country was being forced to do something extra, which it can't do. Clear? Now every country gave their nationally determined contributions. Okay. India also gave its own list of nationally determined contributions. And every country was asked to achieve these nationally determined contributions by 2030. Okay. Now, India also gave its list of nationally determined contributions, NDCs. But India achieved one of its NDC well in advance by 2025. The target was, the deadline was 2030. India achieved one NDC, not all NDCs, one NDC by 2025. So we are basically celebrating that. That's about it. Okay. So let's talk about this. So India's NDCs under Paris Agreement. So basically we are talking about Paris Climate Agreement that happened naturally in Paris in 2015 under UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Okay, Conference of Parties happens under this. Okay, so what was in the news? India has announced that non-fossil fuel sources now constitute over 50% of its installed electricity capacity. Okay, fulfilling a core 2030 Paris Agreement target 5 years ahead of schedule. Clear? So the thing is, India gave a long list of things that it would do to achieve or to fight against climate change. Okay, this long list is known as NDCs. Now there were many NDCs, but for us 3 key NDCs are important. Okay, number 1, India said that its total installed electricity capacity would, 50% of its total electricity generation capacity would come from renewable sources, non-fossil fuel sources. Currently, well, we produce a lot of electricity from coal, right? India said that by 2030 we'll achieve this target of producing 50% of our electricity from renewable energy sources. Okay, this is something that India has achieved not by 2030 but by 2025. Then other targets were emissions intensity, reduce energy emission intensity by 45% from 2005 levels. So whatever emissions intensity was there. Okay, what is emission intensity? Well, India's greenhouse gas emissions divided by India's GDP. So whatever was India's emissions intensity by at a time around 2005. Well, India said that we will reduce this by 45% by 2030. That was the idea. So India will reduce its emissions intensity by 45% from 2005 levels. Then, well, the thing is that the reason why global warming is happening is because there is a lot of greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide, in the atmosphere. Now, one thing about plants is that during photosynthesis, plants absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So the more plants we have on earth, more forests we have on earth, more will be this taking up of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. This is known as carbon sink. So forests are known as carbon sinks because they absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So India said under its NDC that we will create an additional 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent carbon sink. We will plant enough forests and tree cover that would capture 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 from the atmosphere. So these were our NDCs. Clear? Now we have achieved NDC number 1. What about other NDCs? Okay. So we said that we will produce carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons. By 2021, we already achieved 2.29 billion tons. So it's a matter of time that we will achieve this target also. As far as the emissions intensity is concerned, we have already reduced it by 36%. So it's a matter of time that we will reach 45% as well. So India is well on its track to achieve all its goals under Paris Climate Agreement. Now, this would be very good news for India, and this would be very good for India's standing in the entire world. Clear? Still, well, we face a lot of challenges in our fight against climate change. Okay, so what are the current challenges? Well, yes, we are expanding renewable energy. Okay, we are expanding renewable energy, particularly solar and wind. But the thing is, this progress in renewable energy in India is still slow as compared to China. China's renewable energy expansion is 10 times that of India. China is way ahead of us when it comes to renewable energy capacity. Clear? Then, next challenge is with renewable energy itself. Solar and wind have a problem of intermittency, and we have talked about this yesterday. Okay, well, solar and wind power plants can produce electricity only when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. What about night time? What about still air, no windy atmosphere? Okay, what about cloudy weather? At that point, there is no electricity produced, right? So there is power intermittency. Then, well, the thing is, this energy has many components. Electricity or power is just one of them. Energy is used for transportation, industry, and many other areas. There we use petrol, diesel, and all. When it comes to non-power sectors, there is slow uptake of non-fossil fuels. We still use petrol and diesel, though we are moving towards electric vehicles. But still, there is slow progress in non-power sectors. In power sectors, we are clearly expanding solar and wind. But in non-power sectors like transportation, industry, things are moving slow. Plus, the solution to this problem of greenhouse gas emissions, we talked about this yesterday. The solution to this twin problem of greenhouse gas emissions and intermittency is going nuclear. Okay? And recently, small modular reactors are the best nuclear reactors that countries are investing in to go nuclear. Right? But there is slow progress in SMRs as well. Plus, there are some legal hurdles also in India, which we talked about yesterday. Clear? So these are the current challenges. That's about it. Now let's quickly move forward to next topic, and that is about critical minerals. India's search for critical minerals. Now about critical minerals. You see, climate change is a reality. Okay. So the thing is that countries are transitioning towards low carbon economies. Okay. We are preferring electric vehicles over petrol diesel vehicles. Okay. We are moving towards electric batteries. Okay, we are moving towards solar and wind energy, right? So this phenomena is known as green transition. Countries are transitioning towards green economies, okay, where there is low carbon emissions. Now the thing is that for electric vehicles, the batteries used in electric vehicles require a lot of minerals like lithium, cobalt. Similarly, solar cells, wind turbines, they all require certain minerals that are very important for their functioning, right? These are known as critical minerals. Clear? Well, if you are serious about achieving your climate goals, you need to transition, green transition. For that, you require critical minerals, lithium, cobalt, copper, many other things. Similarly, well, in this day and age, well, electronics are ruling everyone's lives. Okay? AI is ruling everyone's lives. Now, these AI technologies, electronic technologies, they also require lithium, cobalt, copper, and many other critical minerals, including rare earth elements. Similarly, many missiles, India's defense equipment, they also require critical minerals. Therefore, it would be safe to say that if India does not have any access to critical minerals, its defense would suffer, economy would suffer, green transition would suffer. Clear? Makes sense? So critical minerals are those minerals whose supply is limited, but whose access is important for a country's national development as well as economic development. Their supply is important for strategic reasons. Clear? So these are critical minerals. Now every country has its own list of critical minerals, okay, based on their requirements. You should remember this, that as far as the definition of critical minerals is concerned, these are those minerals that are important for national security, economic development, and their supply is restricted. We need to secure supply chains of these minerals. Okay. Now, every country, based on the availability of their resources, has created their own list of critical minerals. India too has created a list of 30 minerals which it calls critical. Now, these critical minerals are very rare for India, and India needs to ensure their supply if India really wants to become Viksit Bharat by 2047. That is why we have launched National Critical Minerals Mission. Okay, so let's talk about this. So, India's search for critical minerals. Clear? So, the importance of critical minerals, like I said, it is important in national security. Clear? Many defense equipment require this. Then it's important for science and technology like AI, data centers, big data analytics. All these things require critical minerals. Okay, science and technology, economic development, because now the new economies are dependent on these equipments. They are dependent on AI. National security, science and technology, economic development, and green transition. All of these things are India's 21st century goals. So we need critical minerals. Clear? Now, as far as India's critical minerals are concerned, well, how many critical? Like I said, we have created our own list of critical minerals based on our own circumstances. Okay. So Ministry of Mines constituted a special committee. This committee in 2022 identified minerals that are critical for India, and they identified 30 minerals. That is why we have 30 critical minerals. Clear? 30, 31. Now, they're critical, okay, but their supply is not, their supply chains are vulnerable. India faces a lot of challenges as far as supply of these critical minerals are concerned. Okay, so what sort of challenges does India face? Challenge number one, supply chain vulnerability. Why? Because most of these critical minerals are not found in India. They are not available. Okay, India does not have enough mines. That is why India has is putting all its resources in exploring India's soil, India's land, so that we can find any critical mineral block for us to mine. Okay, currently we are dependent on imports. That is why we are searching for mines in India that will produce critical minerals. Clear? And the problem with imports is that China somehow has a chokehold. China has a lot of mines of these critical minerals under its control. Clear? Plus, once you take these critical minerals out of the ground, you need to process them for them to be used in different technologies. India lacks processing capacity also, and most of the processing capacity lies with China. So again, we are import dependent on China, and China is not a friendly country. That is why we are vulnerable in these two areas. Then, well, India has basically given exploration licenses to many private mining companies to explore India's land for critical minerals. But there is low private sector enthusiasm, maybe because there are not many incentives for them. So India needs to work on that. And then most of these critical minerals that are found in India, whose mines are found in India, they lie in forest areas. So that would lead to deforestation. Plus, they lie on tribal lands. So it would lead to a lot of social problems with tribals if we displace them from this land and mine for critical minerals. So that is a problem. Plus, India does not have adequate infrastructure for circular economy. Circular economy is 3 R's. Okay, recycle, reuse, and all. Okay, so we don't have a good recycling infrastructure. So the critical minerals that have already been used in batteries, once those batteries are out of use, if we recycle them properly, we'll still have some critical minerals, but we do not have a good recycling, reuse infrastructure, circular economy. So these are the challenges. Now, what steps has the government taken to solve for these challenges? First of all, government launched National Critical Minerals Mission. Under this, government is putting in a lot of resources for exploration of critical minerals domestically. Okay, to provide incentives to private participants, private mining companies. We have also amended Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act, under which various critical mineral blocks would have a lot of incentives for private players. Okay, this Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act was in 1957. Okay, but it was amended in 2023. So this amendment was done to incentivize private players to do more mineral exploration. And third, well, foreign partnerships. If we cannot find critical minerals in India, well, then we have to look abroad. Okay. So there are many countries which are rich in lithium, like Argentina. Recently, Prime Minister Modi was in Argentina. So we are signing agreements with Namibia, Argentina. Plus, we also signed an agreement with USA, Mineral Security Partnership, which ensures that supply of these critical minerals are given to all the members of MSP. Okay. So USA started this initiative, Mineral Security Partnership. All the members of this would work together to secure supply chains of critical minerals. So India is a party to this also. So Indian government is very serious about it because it is a serious issue after all. Clear? All right. And now let's talk about third news item, which is ethanol blended petrol program. So look, the thing is that, well, as far as petrol and diesel are concerned, they are created by processing crude oil. Okay. Now, India does not produce enough crude oil itself. So it is import dependent, especially on Gulf countries for crude oil, right? Now, most of this crude oil is used to create petrol and petrol and diesel is used in, well, vehicles, right? Now, recently it was found out, not recently, many years back it was found out that ethyl alcohol, ethanol, if you blend ethanol with petrol, still your cars would run properly. So ethanol, when blended with petrol, acts as petrol only. It acts as fuel only. Clear? So in 2003, India launched an initiative under which, well, India wanted to achieve 20% ethanol blended petrol, which means that whatever petrol you're filling in your cars, 20% of that fuel is ethanol. Okay? Now, why was this done? The thing is, first of all, when you burn ethanol, less greenhouse gas emissions happen as compared to petrol. So, through 20% blending of ethanol, some greenhouse gas emissions would reduce. Then, this would also reduce demand for petrol, right? Because 20% of your fuel is now ethanol. So, demand for petrol would get reduced. Demand for crude oil would get reduced. Our import bill would get reduced, right? And our foreign exchange would also, foreign exchange reserves would improve. We will save a lot of foreign exchange reserves because we are not spending it on imports. So this is an example. Plus, India can produce ethanol itself. You see, ethanol is produced by waste products of sugarcane. Okay, sugarcane processing. So when you manufacture sugar from sugarcane, molasses is released as a byproduct. You can use molasses to produce ethanol. You can use rice, maize and other grains to produce ethanol. So this would produce, if you make it compulsory that 20% of your fuel should be ethanol, this would increase demand for ethanol. Higher demand for ethanol would also increase demand for these crops, sugarcane, maize, rice. Okay, higher demand for these crops would also increase, their prices. So farmers would get better prices, right? Make sense? So it is a win-win situation, and that is why we launched ethanol blended program. The idea was to achieve 20% blending by 2030. But we have achieved this target by 2025. So congratulations, India. India achieved this target 5 years well in advance. Okay, that is why this topic was in the news. So let's talk about it. So about EBP, launched in 2003 and it is being implemented by Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. Goal is 20% blending of ethanol in petrol. Purpose, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Import bill should be reduced. Support for farm economy. Right? Now, what is the feedstock for producing ethanol? Ethanol can be produced from sugarcane, corn, surplus food grains like rice, maize. Okay? This can be used as feedstock to produce ethanol. Okay, so again, that is why higher demand for sugarcane, corn, surplus food grains would improve farm economy. Clear? But there are a lot of challenges also. Because of this ethanol blending program, there are some issues that have come up. What are those issues? Well, first of all, these crops, their availability is seasonal in nature. Okay? When sugarcane harvesting time comes, then sugarcane would be available, but it won't be available throughout the year. Same goes for rice, maize and all that stuff, all those crops. Therefore, availability of feedstock for ethanol goes through variations throughout the year. That is one problem. The second problem is food versus fuel debate, because these are food crops, right? If you are diverting these food crops to produce fuel, okay, which is ethanol that is being blended in petrol, well, then that would lead to shortage of food crops. Now, whenever there is supply shortage of food crops and there is high demand, what does it do? It leads to food inflation. Now, food inflation would hamper the budget of lower middle class people. Okay, so it basically hampers consumers. So, what are you going to prioritize? Environment or people's food requirements? What are you going to prioritize? So, there is this food versus fuel debate. Clear? Then there are some infrastructure bottlenecks. There are not many processing facilities, storage facilities. So, this is there. And yes, most of these crops that are used as feedstock for producing ethanol, like sugarcane, rice, well, these are water guzzling crops. They require a lot of water. So if there is high demand for ethanol, there will be high demand for sugarcane and rice. If there is high demand for sugarcane rice, more farmers will grow sugarcane and rice. And sugarcane and rice are water intensive crops. They suck the groundwater from below. That leads to, well, depletion of groundwater resources, which can cause water insecurity as well. So these are some of the challenges which you should be aware of. All right. And the last topic, but not the least, and that is Paika Rebellion. Now look, before the revolt of 1857, there was another armed rebellion that happened against East India Company in the state of Odisha. And that was the Paika Rebellion. Okay, it happened in 1870. So way before revolt of 1857, there was an armed struggle against the East India Company, and that was in the state of Odisha. So naturally, for people from Odisha or people of Odisha celebrate this. They celebrate this as India's first war of independence. Okay, Odisha government has given this Paika Rebellion as a status of first war of independence because it happened well before 1857. Clear? So for Odia people, it is an important event. It is something related to Odia pride. Okay, their nationalism, their resistance against exploitation. Okay, so it's a very important thing for people from Odisha. But recently there was a political controversy because NCRTs have deleted a particular portion that was dedicated to Paika Rebellion in their history textbooks. So NCRT has deleted Paika Rebellion from its history textbooks, 8 standard history textbooks. And that has ignited debate in the state of Odisha. Currently, leader of opposition or leader of the opposition party, Naveen Patnaik, okay, well, he has protested against this. He said that this is something wrongful. BJD is also protesting against this. So there is a political controversy related to this. Okay, we shouldn't be interested as civil services aspirants. We shouldn't be interested in this political controversy. What BJP is saying, what BJD is saying. We shouldn't be interested in that. What we should be interested in is, well, what is this Paika Rebellion? Okay, when did it happen? Who were Paikas? What was the result of this rebellion? That is something that is important for us, because questions from your modern history portion can be asked in your prelims as well as mains examination related to Paika Rebellion. So be careful. Okay. So Paika Rebellion. Okay. So it was a rebellion against East India Company in 1817. Okay. It was basically a rebellion which was mostly done by, this rebellion was mostly by Paikas. Now Paikas were a military class of people in Odisha. Okay. Now when British defeated the local rulers of Odisha, well, this military class got disbanded. Earlier in the previous, under the previous rulers, Gajapati rulers, this military class was given revenue-free land grants. Okay. And many facilities were given to them. They had a high status. All these things were there. Once the British conquered Odisha, these land grants were taken away. Zamindars, Bengal-based zamindars were put over them, who would collect revenue from these paikas. Okay, their status got depleted. Many of their religious symbols, like management of Lord Jagannath Temple, that was also being interfered with by the British, this East India Company. Then there was a lot of exploitation. Land revenue was high. A lot of factors were going on, but basically, major factor was that the traditional elite under the previous rulers, Gajapati rulers, okay, before the arrival of the British, well, their status was completely depleted under the British rule, and that is why they rebelled. Okay, so this Paika rebellion was under the leadership of Bakshi Jagabandhu. Okay, Paikas were a class of military men under previous Gajapati rulers. Okay, this was an armed rebellion before revolt of 1857. Now, what were the causes? Well, these causes are listed down in detail in your notes, but well, most of them I have mentioned already. Okay, so there were economic causes like land revenue system introduced by the British. Then there were social causes, because this social class of Paikas, they felt alienated. There were some religious causes like management of Lord Jagannath Temple. This was an issue, and many other causes were there. Clear? Which basically motivated all these Paikas to revolt against the company rule. Now, they revolted against the company rule and they were defeated eventually because of many reasons. Okay, for various reasons, they got defeated. Okay, they were defeated. The rebellion was crushed by the East India Company army, though the rebellion went underground later until 1825. Nonetheless, that is not important. What is important is who were Paikas, what are the causes behind Paika rebellion, when did it happen? Clear? I hope that part is clear to you. Alright. On that note, I'll be signing off. Now, the thing is that before I sign off, I say this every time. So I'm going to say it again. And that is, please do not forget to revise this lecture from the notes provided by us on our Telegram channel. And please be consistent and regular with this lecture series. That is very important. Current affairs should be covered on a daily basis. Otherwise, there would be a lot of backlog and you would never find the time to cover that backlog. So make it a daily habit of yours. And on that note, I'll be signing off with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.